Hello, friends. Welcome to Empty Cloud Monastery, my last session of the week. Next week, you'll have Tansanti, who will be leading a few different sessions. And then the week after that, I think I will be on again. And then you'll have Bhante Sumano at the end of February. And then Bhante Sutta, so you'll have to wait until March. So tonight we have a special edition of Monk Chat on the subject that we've been covering in past few sessions. So the mind and emotions, which pretty much covers the entire experience that we have. So you should have lots of questions, or if not, it's totally okay. We can end now. Take a little break and hello to Geeta, hello to Chittapala, hello to Denise. We found your roses today and Wadana Sado, so beautiful. And hello to Kausar friend. And hello to Adine. Is that right? Did I pronounce it right? No? Adine, who also speaks Italian really fluently. So he says that his name is the same as the Italian Adino, but without the O, so Adini. Yes, I got it right. Well done, Ayya Soma. And hello to Diana. So Diana, is it Diana or Diana? Because sometimes I read things in Italian, sometimes I read things in English. There's only two modes. And my mind goes, if it's not English, it's Italian, of course. So Adine got my mind. That's why he translated for me his, it's been 4 times, Bhante Sumana, that we've been trying to, that he's been explaining to me his name. Diana. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. All right. So whenever you're ready, you can type in any questions that have arisen or comments really that have arisen in the past few days, few lifetimes, few eons, whatever it is that you remember or that you've experienced. There is no wrong question. There is no silly question. Everybody's silent. This is great. And, since I spoke so much after 1 month of silence, speaking 6 times in a week, it's really intense, actually. It's not normally that, like we've done it in the past while it was regular schedule. And it was all right, but it's actually very interesting to do it once you shut up for a long period of time. And then you're like, wow. During the first session, I was like, wow, I feel a little dizzy. And I still have 5 sessions to go. Wow, it's a lot. All right, so Kausar friend says, it's not really a clear question, but I often see a description of right view that is like, I am the owner of my actions, here to my actions. How to reconcile with nonself. So it's a little bit, it's on the lines of, if there is no self, then who gets reborn? Bhante Sutta gave a beautiful talk actually on the subject matter that is on our YouTube channel, so you can listen to that again. We'll give you a little bit more context. But in brief, the reason why I smiled actually, I am the owner of my actions, here to my actions, it's because it's one of my favorite recollections. So beautiful, so empowering. So in terms of non-self, we actually spoke about it last night. We spoke a bit about it this morning. We actually speak about it all the time, really. And we speak about it all the time because the Buddha speaks about it all the time. It's a central concept in Buddhism. But we need to understand that there is a process between where we're at and where we're going. That's why there is a path. If we were already, there's lots of word games that we get wrapped up in. But, if we were already fully awakened, if we already truly realized non-self, then there would be no path. There would be nothing to do. There would be no suffering. So we are here. The Buddha tells us, well, this is how things are. You're a little confused right now. You can't really see how things are. So practice in this way, and also understand, train your mind to become more in tune with Dhamma. Train your mind to understand, to start seeing causality. And as you practice this way, you gradually start understanding non-self until you fully see it for yourself. You fully have realized it. So in general, we talk about the way that the tradition speaks about it is conventional reality and absolute reality. And us uninstructed worldlings, we get the two very confused and mixed up together. And then sometimes we start saying, oh, the Buddha contradicts himself, all sorts of things. The Dhamma actually doesn't make much sense. It's not that the Dhamma doesn't make much sense. It's actually the Buddha tells us, out of compassion, the same thing over and over and over again, over and over and over again in different ways, with the hope, the wish that eventually we'll get it. So if you talk about this monastery, right now, I can describe the monastery from the inside. But if you're outside, you're going to see an entirely different building, right? So if I start then describing it from the outside and you're inside, you're going to think I'm going to be talking about something completely different and that I'm contradicting myself, right? But that's not the case. So fundamentally, the teachings of the Buddha are teachings of causality. So we want to fine-tune, instead of thinking that some things have a cause and consequence. So, we see that if I throw this this holy object, which would be very bad karma if I threw a holy object. The action, there's a cause, and there's a consequence that it lands on Bhante Sumano, or Bhante Sumano, who's right here. We see that there's a cause and a consequence, right? There were different conditions put in place for this action to happen to begin with. So there are some things that we see even before Buddhist practice, even before we understand, even before we encounter the teachings. Otherwise, we would have been run over. We would have been, incapable of turning on a computer. We would have been incapable of reading, speaking, writing, doing anything if we didn't have a basic sense of causality. It's just that our delusion, the process of delusion, starts putting things in container and going, okay, well, this is clearly because I see the causality, but this other thing, I have no idea, so it must be random. And if I am doing any research, then I'm going to start projecting all my ideas onto that. So when we talk about a being, it's a simple way to talk about. It's kind of like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, as Bhante G says. Has anybody seen Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday? No, but it's a very useful convention to go about in the world. Otherwise, if I have to say, well, these 5 aggregates subject to clinging are now interacting with those 5 aggregates subject to clinging. The Jamaican 5 aggregates subject to clinging are talking to the Italian 5 aggregates subject to clinging. I mean, it's a full-on sort of mouthful. Very difficult. So we say this being and this other being. There are these actions and there are these consequences. And yes, we have a sense of I, of a being being here. And we have a sense of we're making actions. We're making, in every moment, decisions, willful decisions. through body, speech, and mind. And the ones that we like, if we send, for example, a resume to the job that we like, we really hope that we're going to get, there's going to be a result. We're going to reap the result of our good action. If we say something nice, to our friends, we hope that we're going to reap the same result. And like, oh, how about you tell me something nice too? Hey, when I told you, you're great. Right? We like that. But then when we do naughty things, we're like, oh, no causality there. Oh, I'm not reaping anything. And then when unpleasant results happen, we're like, oh, poor me. Why did I deserve all of this misery? I'm such a cute little angel, right? So this is why the Buddha, to pierce our delusion out of compassion, invites us to contemplate in this way. I'm the owner of my action. Will follow me like my shadow. So I'd better create good conditions in order to have good results. If I don't want to suffer, if if someone is masochistic, then the Buddha also tells you, well, that's the way to go, make a bunch of unwholesome actions, then you'll have really unpleasant results. If that's what you're looking for. So it's very simple, very, very, down to earth teachings of causality. When this comes into being, this comes into being. When this ceases, this ceases. So, hello to Lucas as well. And Denise says, I sometimes experience random, short, intense bursts of emotion, grief or happiness, and then they seem to disappear. I find it very strange. Should I try to investigate it or just let it go? Yeah, absolutely. So that is vipaka. So they seem random, as we were saying, because we have a bit of a cropped sort of vision of reality. So we only see a few things, right? Actually, without even getting into Buddhism psychology, Western psychology already gives us a bit of a glimpse of that. How many things do we remember of when we were infants? I personally have a few glimpses of when I was 3, when I was 4, and I went to kindergarten. I have a few, probably 10 memories of that. Playing with, I had a friend. He would play with, a male friend. He would play with my Barbies, and I would play with his cars, whatever, and would trade toys. But that's kind of about it. Then I have another glimpse. All of a sudden, I'm 6. And I'm in Switzerland and I'm crying and I'm telling everyone they're stupid. And then I'm 7 all of a sudden. And I am happy, having a great with the Swiss people that were there. And then I'm 8 and I'm back in Italy and I can't speak Italian that well. And I'm really sad because now I'm different again, It's really around 8 years, I said in 30 seconds. But what is in between? So it's just a bunch of random things that I remember, but I don't remember a lot of information that has happened, a lot of things that have happened in the meanwhile, right? So then when I look at my experience, perhaps I can identify the causes of some of my, say, insecurity or my difficulties or hesitancies going about in life with the things that have happened to me when I was a child, constantly moving from different place to this other different place because my parents were moving from town to town. That sense of never belonging or never being at home or always being different and weird, never having anything in common with the people around me. So I'm like, oh, okay, I can see how those conditions created those thoughts, and those thoughts somewhat kind of persisted. And some other things that I have no idea. and they seem random. And perhaps they actually happen within this life, between the age of 6 and 7. And I have this like whole gap between me saying you're stupid to me going, oh, I like you. What happened in between? I don't know. So Western psychology has a lot of emphasis in trying to delve into the nuts and bolts of, what kind of happened, and uncovering and resurfacing this past, to find quote unquote causes. But the Buddhist path is it's more straightforward, to a degree or the other. So you don't necessarily need to unearth the details of your life, but rather observe the workings of the mind right now, understand it, see how they're impermanent, and not make a big deal out of it, fundamentally. So, yeah, I too have experienced a lot of random, short, intense bursts of emotion, grief, or happiness. Yeah. I remember one of my first retreats that I did, actually, I was also PMSing. So it was like that times 20. I was the most insane person in the meditation hall at Bhavana Society. I also cried after 5 seconds in my interview with Bhanteji, which was profoundly humiliating. I entered and Bhanteji was like, oh, how did your meditation practice go? And I was like, well, Bhante, it's going, ah! And I started crying. And I still remember he was like, and I was so embarrassed and I couldn't stop crying. And then after 10 minutes, he's like, 10 minutes. I'm waiting. Bye. And then I left and I spent the next session of the meditation going, oh my God, that was so embarrassing. I'm such a mess. It's horrible. And everybody else around me is so normal. Like they're like in fourth jhana. Anyway, at the end of the retreat, when we all came out of meditation, we were sharing our experience. And I realized the reason why Bhanteji had this so like easy, like it was basically the exercise that he was doing with pretty much 99% of the people that were entering the room. He was like, okay, next. So we have this delusion that we're so special, but in reality, we're all like such a big mess. So that's when I actually it was during that retreat that then I started practicing very much in terms of mindfulness of emotion. So just really just looking at my experience and seeing it arising and passing away, rising and passing away, of how impermanent it was. Then it was great because then all these strange, as you call them, experiences was actually quite exciting, because I was like, oh, finally something's happening in meditation. It's much more interesting than just the breath, in breath, out breath. I mean, constantly changes, but it's very subtle. But one moment you're angry, one moment you're like all loving, and the other moment it's like much better than any blockbuster movie. Very easy to keep the mind focused in meditation, and to practice both concentration and insight and really understand. And then as we start holding our experience in this way, then we stop creating the conditions for this unsettled mind to appear in the future. We'll still have some effects here and there because we have strong habits. So we do cultivate a lot of, unwholesome tendencies. I still do, even though like I understand the work that needs to be done. I still find myself here and there going like, oh, there you go. I'm cultivating that bad habit again, I know I'm going to reap the causes, going to reap the consequences of this habit. So it's always 3 steps forward, 2 steps backward, 3 steps forward, 2 steps backward. And we just keep going. but we're making progress. It's good and it's fine. So don't make a big deal out of it, but at the same time, don't ignore it. Don't pretend it's not there, and just see it. Learn from your experience and from the mind. And Adine says, if you were on a desert island and could only bring one sutta to read, which one would you choose and why? Oh, yeah, that's a difficult one. Hmm. 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 Oh, actually, well, what comes to mind is the Soma Sutta, the sutta that I have, um, where I'm named after. So, yeah, from the Bhikkhuni Samyutta, the Soma Sutta. Quite like it. It's also a very good reminder, you know, it's a desert island, but then never know, maybe someone will appear. Perhaps they're sexist, chauvinist, Buddhist. So it's good to have the Dhamma to support, and we can recollect the right view, the good teachings, instead of being influenced by weird adhamma, weird thoughts. And Laura says, how do we stop letting others control our feelings? Who are these others people that you're talking about? That is a more interesting question. Who is controlling your feelings? Who do you think is controlling your feelings? So you answer that question, Laura, and then we can take it from there. And Kumo says, the Dhammapada Gathas come to mind. And there's some Pali quoted, for good thoughts and negative thoughts cause and effect. Good thoughts and negative thoughts come, cause and effect. Yeah. Great. Thank you for sharing. And Adine says, thank you. I had never before thought of cultivating a bad habit. Very meaningful to me. Oh, yes. We do that all the time. But, I actually had this insight when we were at the previous center in Rockaway Beach, at the Rockaway Summer House. I was actually still a layperson. And we had, maybe I was still a layperson. So we had 3 versions of the garden there. And the first year, there was an actual gardener who knew what she was doing and took care of everything in terms of like the logistics, what was planted where, and some from seeds, some from seedlings, and whatnot. Put all the conditions, told us what to do, and we were doing a thing, and we reaped all the results. Then the second year, she disappeared. So, as with everything, when there was no one around, I was like, I guess I'll have to take care of the garden. And I had literally never planted anything. And my success with plants historically had been very poor, with indoor plants in any way. Still actually pretty poor. Normally plants that enter my life indoors last. I mean, unless there's this really beautiful beautiful plants that I love, the ones that don't need water. How do you call them? The succulents. We have like a Highlander plant that has actually been with us since the beginning of the Rockery Summer House. It's still here. We almost managed to kill also the succulent, but but they're incredibly resilient. So anyway, I had to start from scratch. And I did so much research, hours and hours delving into all these articles on the internet on how to grow things and what not to do. I made a few experiments. Some went well, some went bad, poorly. And so that was basically the process of learning, but by starting from a basis of right view. So a basis of someone who actually knows how to do this thing, I look for these teachings on gardening. I read them, I interpret them, and I try to create the garden, right? So it's kind of like a hit or miss because I'm still in the learning process. And so some things perhaps my mind grasps straight away. So the result is actually the result that is written in the instructions. And some others I completely get it wrong. And so the result is a little bit different. So the causes and conditions are not quite there. But we actually had a surprisingly good yield. There was a lot of produce, it was pretty incredible and whatnot. Then the third year, I went to California during the spring. I had become a monastic by then. That's why I was in California. And so someone else took care of the garden. But contrarily to my previous self, they weren't that excited about studying, doing all the research. And they had already seen, kind of like they had a gist of how I had kind of planted things or done things in the past because they had seen them, not because they were actually, doing the work or being involved. They had just, kind of seen, kind of like if you're stepping into a room and there's someone sewing, but you're not really sewing, but you kind of see, I remember that person put the fabric in that way and then thread the machine and I don't know, then use the needle for this and that. And I came back and it was completely so amusing. Because actually, I think we had 10% of the yield of the previous year because only, one thing out of 10, like there was a 10%, kind of 10% things that went right in comparison to the previous year because there was no research, there was no right view. So it was kind of like a hit, miss, 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 half a hit, miss, 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 and hit. So there was no consideration in terms of like, where I'm planting this right now. There is sunshine because it's spring, but actually there won't be any sunshine when there is the summer. Conditions will be changing. Or this plant needs another plant, a companion plant to be supported in order to grow naturally. So you don't need any pesticides or anything that will support each other in their growth. So fundamentally, we need to have right view in order to be able to cultivate the wholesome and eradicate the unwholesome. And what we do when all these things start growing, all of a sudden we have no idea what we're dealing with. Actually, which is basically what was happening while I was in California. People were watering everything, whether it was weeds or seedlings. So we had a huge harvest of tomatoes and an even bigger harvest of weeds. Actually, a small harvest of tomatoes that year and a huge harvest of weeds. Like mainly weeds. So I was like, I don't know, what is it? And so it was a big teaching in terms of how we go about life when we don't have the right view. It's a hit or miss. But as we actually learn the teachings, then we start identifying things. We're like, okay, well, this is a weed. Let me remove it. This is a seedling. Let me nourish it. So then I'll have a nice harvest of tomatoes afterwards. This is an eggplant. It needs these supportive conditions. So let me put these conditions in place so that I can have eggplant. That's great. Win-win situation. But we can't have that knowledge unless someone else gives it to us. And if no one gives it to us, then we have to do the work all by ourselves, like the Buddha did. Which is very, very difficult. And it takes eons and eons and eons and eons of incredible hard work. I mean, it's difficult as it is to practice the teachings with the instructions. I can't even imagine how it is without instructions. Actually, I do imagine because that was my I have clear memory of it 5 years ago. Um, so so yeah. So yeah, we definitely cultivate a lot of bad habits. And Luca says, how to deal with worldly distractions that pulls one away from the Dharma practice. The answer is careful attention. So that's the practice, the training that we need to do. As we were talking about, actually, I think in the first or second session. So it's that quality of self-restraint. We normally, you know, there are perhaps certain things that we kind of know that we need to, that are a little bit dangerous, and we need to practice a self-restraint, especially if we're monastics, right? We took some precepts, we kind of know, okay, well, some precepts that are quite serious if I break them, so I better, pay attention to this. So I better keep an eye, watch out. Or if we're lay people practicing the Dhamma, or if we're just lay people who don't want to go to prison. Simple as that. So you're kind of like, okay, or even get a fine. If you're driving, then you're like, well, let me pay attention here. Let me have some careful attention in following the right directions and the speed limit and whatever one does when they drive. I don't have a driver's license, so I never driven anything. So I'm probably not the best person to give these examples. But in those situations, we have some careful attention, right? But the Buddha invites us to have careful attention in every single moment, and especially in things that we think are trivial. So if we're a greed type, the reason why we're increasing our greed or cultivating your greed, the Buddha told us long time ago, but a few days ago, we were reading that passage where he says the answer is careless attention. So, I really crave this cup, and I just look at it and I'm like, oh, actually, it's really great. And oh, well, there's nothing really wrong in obsessing about the cup. Let me do it a little bit more. Yeah, this is kind of great. Actually, I was doing it at a certain point today. I caught myself because it's my week of monk duty. I opened this infernal machine of the computer, and actually, I was doing it on Sutta Central on the forum. And I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong in indulging in opening this little thread. Oh, let me check this other thing. It's actually even related to Dhamma. Oh, what is the big deal? I was like cultivating in the meanwhile so much greed, hatred, and delusion, and also willfully. I would catch myself and then I would start lying to myself. I was half aware. There was this kind of a vicious cycle that I was in. And I'm like, oh, I should probably go and meditate downstairs. Oh, just a little bit more. Oh, wait, let me write this little post. Address this. So yeah, we do that all the time. And it's the same thing with, once again, the flip side with things that we dislike. Careless attention, we start hating it. Like, oh, this cup, it's actually awful. I hate these IKEA cups. They all look the same. They actually like trip. Oh, why do we have only IKEA cups here at the monastery? Like, seriously? So we don't think too much because we're not really hating on, say, a living being, that we have an awareness that it's perhaps an unwholesome thing to do. So we're carelessly hating things. And in that moment, we're cultivating. As we were saying earlier, yay, yeah, have some water, all these weeds. Woo! Do you want also some fertilizer? Here you go. So, yeah. Let's stop that. Oh, yeah. So, how to deal with worldly distractions, careful attention. So practicing, and that's also what we do in meditation. That's a great opportunity where nothing is really, happening, distracting us, where we can train ourselves to pay attention in every moment, bring the mind back to the object. So instead of us being governed by the mind, it's the other way around. We're not enslaved anymore. In fact, that's why it can be so peaceful. When we find those like micro moments of freedom, then it's quite great. When we are enslaved by our hindrances, which we have cultivated with careless attention, it's a nightmare. It's horrible. You're like restless one moment, and then you're drowsy, then you're hating, then you're craving. Earlier, I had this weird, bizarre craving of airplane food. It appeared while I was meditating. What on earth is my mind producing? What a weird hindrance. So, yeah, careless attention. I had cultivated back in the day. I mean, it's not even like a recent thing. I remember when I was a kid, I was obsessed with airplane food. I really liked it. It was really cute, like miniature, like butter, miniature, cutlery, miniature. So cute. So that's probably why it appeared like 20 years later. And Kaz, our friend, says, I have a hard time recognizing my emotions unless they're pretty strong. In our guided meditation, I was really searching for something to feel. I think they're there, but they don't really register. I guess it is kind of like how people have trouble feeling their body in meditation. But I do see how the mind moves if it is attracted or repulsed. I just hope it is good enough. Well, in those cases, when there are no strong emotions, it's definitely, I will agree that, I normally only do that, not only, but mainly do that type of meditation when there is something that is strongly present. So the mind naturally gravitates towards it. But then it's very interesting, actually, when to explore our state of being when we think that there are no emotions. And in reality, there's always something there. And what is always there is dukkha. That slight sense of, like right now, for example, if I close my eyes, that latent, lingering dissatisfaction. And I'm overall actually quite happy. It's always there. So we can get in tuned. It's a great opportunity to get in tune with the subtleties of dukkha. And we can see it also when really great things happen to us, too. Things that we perceive as nice and great, like great news, something that we're happy about. And we actually delve deeply into the physical sensation. It's actually kind of uncomfortable. Like, that's dukkha too. So yeah, there's always something there. And we practice and we get in tune to it. It's also, once again, we have to also see our conditions and what suits our mind in particular moments. What are we experiencing, and what is the appropriate antidote, so to speak. That's why the Buddha didn't, just teach kind of like the Mahasi method. It's very specific, one size fits all. But the Mahasi method is one size fits all for Mahasi Sayadaw. And then it happens to also be a great fit for a lot of practitioners, but not everyone. Like, it doesn't work really terribly good for my conditions. But I know a lot of people that it's actually a great method. But if that were the only method, then the Buddha would have taught the only method. Instead, the Buddha gives us a lot and gives us a big palette. It's actually meditation. When I first got into it, I got into it because I found it to be very creative process. When I first said that thing, I remember people were like, creative? That's weird. I was like, yeah, actually, it's a very creative process, because you need to understand what kind of paintbrush you need. It's the same thing, like paintbrush or color or medium. There's never You're never making the same sort of piece of art. It's not a photocopy machine, but rather it's a practice that is ever changing, that leads to more and more awareness of the mind and more things that need to be worked with. So see for yourself. So if that, does that sort of practice doesn't work, go to something else too, you know? And Chittapala says, I have been struggling with one unwholesome mind state for 2 years. Feels kind of permanent. I can't seem to get through it. So much dukkha impacting myself and others. Working with hindrances isn't working. Being in a monastery, it's never there. So I cling to be in a monastery. After a 13-year practice, I long to try to ordination. But as a trans person, I can't. Thoughts? You're welcome to come at Empty Cloud Monastery for a residency. And well, perhaps once the pandemic is over. But yeah, there shouldn't be any issues for trans people to be ordained. So we have the belief, so to speak, for lack of better words, English is not my first language, in this place, that the Vinaya is, not this sort of rigid, oppressive system, but rather it's actually a gift that the Buddha has given us. And so sometimes, it's more of our delusion that creates issues and obstacles for people to go forth, rather than the Vinaya itself. So if you aspire to ordain, there are actually a few monasteries aside from ours where trans people are welcome, and they can go forth. And yeah, in terms of like the unwholesome mind state feeling kind of permanent, yeah, the Buddha talks about that as well. That there are we covered that the first session, where there are different types of dukkha within the dukkha. Some that, are very fast, they arise and they cease straight away. Some linger on for a little more, and some that last for quite a long time. But those are impermanent too. So that's a good news. That's great. And it's also beautiful that you've seen that there are certain conditions that you put in place that then create different results. So clearly practicing Dhamma leads to the cessation of suffering. So please don't give it up because some random people told you that it's not possible. As a trans person, it's not the case. There are options. So send us an email and we can start talking about it. And Sean says, I have a question about right livelihood. I'm thinking of applying to a job where I teach civilian work skills to people in the military. Would something like this be right livelihood? So teaching civilian work skills, so it depends on the type of civilian work skills that you would be teaching. So if you are thinking that the wrong livelihood part is teaching the military, well, no. Actually, the Buddha himself taught generals, taught people who were, he taught anyone who was interested. Now, the type of things that you are teaching them, so if you're teaching them what is it? Third amendment, the amendment that they have in this country. I'm not American. Of of bearing arms and like shooting people. I mean, that's also like a civilian thing. So how to transfer their skill sets from the military to like a civilian army? That's wrong livelihood. Yeah, I would say like no bueno. No, no, no. But if you teach them how to cook, sure, why not? That's no problem. If you teach them the Danman, that is great. If you teach them not killing, super thumbs up. Yeah, if you teach them not stealing, yeah, it's great. No sexual misconduct, yeah, all bonus points. No intoxicants, it's great. No lying, wonderful. Yeah, go for that. And Diana says, if blood relations, they're negative emotions in us, example, resentment, frustration, is severing associations with them a correct form of detachment? How to do that without feeling guilty? Ah, that's basically been a big part of my monastic life, or actually my Buddhist practice, because my parents were really not happy. They still are not happy at all that I'm a religious person and a Buddhist ordained monastic to begin with. So there is this lovely saying in monasteries, which is when you think you are enlightened, go and see your family. And that is because it's basically, how do you say, extremely advanced practice. It's not Sartre, but they always pretend that it's his quote. I don't know whose quote it is, but they say hell is other people, which is somewhat amusing in the way that you see that a lot. You know, there's like gradual levels of practice. When we're by ourselves, that can be also pretty challenging because we're kind of quite annoying too. And there's like levels of annoying until you get to the family that you've been raised with. And I mean, they're very familiar with all your triggers and what kind of buttons to press, and you're familiar with theirs too. And there's this delusion also that we know our parents, our siblings, and they have the delusion that they know us. But in reality, our memory is like probably like 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, however many years old. And so we're still stuck in that thought. And we come to the table with a lot of assumptions. And so it's very difficult. Of course, there's resentment, frustration, severing, all of that coming in. But in terms of resentment, recollect the sutta that we were reading last night. So, those people are saying all those bad things. My brothers are saying all those bad things to my parents. Well, what can I do about it? Oh, my parents are saying all those bad things to my uncles about me. Well, what can I do about it? Oh, my uncle and siblings and whatever are trying to steal the house from me. Well, what can I do about it? I love that sutta because it's just so to the point. I've been using it a lot actually whenever there's any resentment in my mind, or more than also even resentment, agitation, like fear. Oh, maybe that. I'm like, oh, well, what can I do about it? I'm like, oh, nothing. Okay, that's great. And it's very easy to throw it out. So, personally, my take in terms of severing associations, it's an honest evaluation that you need to take for yourself. So, kind of Also be frank with your family. I would encourage that if the relationships gets to a point that it's really toxic and triggers your three fires and their three fires, so greed, hatred, and delusion, it's clearly not beneficial for anyone. So the questions that I would ask is this beneficial for myself? Is this beneficial for the other person? Is this beneficial for myself and others? And based on the answers, at a certain point with my family, the answer was no, this is not beneficial for anyone here. I suffer, you suffer, they suffer, everybody's suffering. Why would we actually keep actively getting into this sort of state of increased suffering? It's better to not talk with one another. So I was quite frank. I was like, either we make an effort to get along, or to understand each other rather than getting along. But like, unless we both, and I also took responsibility myself, and I was like, unless we sit here both really trying to make an effort, then I think the best solution is for us not to talk for a period of time until we are at a better sort of state of our lives where we can reconsider this approach. So I actually didn't talk to them for, I think, about a year. So, and in Italian, translated in Italian terms, that means like an eon. One eon. I did not speak to my family. It was something pretty harsh, but it was necessary. It was a bitter medicine that we all needed. So when we all started becoming ready to have a more civil discourse, then we created the conditions for that to happen. And it's still not perfect, but at least it's not as bad as it was. And one of the teachings that I had from that experience was actually how my mind actually was a little bit of a mirror of my parents' mind. And all their defilements that I thought were only present out there were actually pretty alive and well in my mind too. It's not random that we're born with a family of like lunatics. Right? It's like, oh, my dad is aversive, my mom is aversive, my brothers are both aversive, I'm aversive. In Italian, we say chi si somiglia si piglia, which means like whoever looks alike kind of starts hanging out together. Which is kind of true, actually, when you see it even in unrelated people, right? We tend to stick around unless we're in Dharma circles where we have no control who is interested in the Dharma. So then we have this like weird, crazy assortments of people who can only luckily talk Dhamma, because if they start talking, even about movies, what are you going to do? I mean, one likes the romantic comedy, the other one likes the blockbuster, and the other one likes the movie with subtitles, the other one likes whatever, the documentary. Like, it's just, there's nothing in common. One likes Italian food, the other one likes Jamaican food, the other one likes burgers, the other one doesn't like food at all, likes Burmese, there's nothing in common. But as lay people, we normally can have more agency towards who we hang out with, and we tend to have these sort of niches. And normally it's not only the things that we like. So as a layperson, actually, before Buddhist practice, I used to be a greed type. And in fact, all my friends from my previous life within this life, now that I'm a Buddhist practitioner, I was like, oh, they're all greed types, which is why they're not interested in practice. Very rare to have greed types. The renunciation is not really, the first most appealing thing on the menu. So yeah, so then we can start approaching our family situation as a learning experience and go like, oh, maybe this crazy defilement of my mother is not only in my mother, is it here too? Perhaps. When I had these realizations, it was horrible. It was not comfortable at all. But it was extremely useful. So happy to have done that work. We're still doing that work actually. And that also created the conditions in order to break the pattern. Because I realized that, my parents and I were used to playing what I call ping pong. So they would say one thing and I would reply back and throw the ball at them and they would throw it back at me. And like ping pong, ping pong. It's like already coordinated. I've been doing that for quite a long time. And as I became more aware of my mind, all of a sudden I stopped playing ping pong because I didn't react anymore as I used to. And if they would, say harsh things to me, I wouldn't reply with harsh things. And the first time I did that, my dad was kind of shocked. I still remember when I ordained, when he learned that I had ordained, because I didn't really tell him beforehand, as a Sabariri back in the day. So I ordained, I went forth, and I told him afterwards, and he was like, oh, you're the biggest disappointment that I've had in my entire life. Ooh, that's harsh. And had it been before that, I would have started ranting like, well, you are the biggest disappointment of a father. Who says that to their children? Or I would have started crying. Like, oh, poor me. With this horrible father saying horrible things. But actually, my reaction there was my response there. And I was also blissed out because I had just ordained. So it was in the time where I was like, yes. So much metta. I remember saying, I'm sorry you feel that way. Because I really felt sorry for my dad that he was going through such an unwholesome mind state. So I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm really happy. And so I remember my dad was shocked. Because he was like, wait, what's going on? She was supposed to say something harsh back, as she normally does. Why is that not happening? What's going on here? And that's how we break the cycle. The cycle of ping pong. Let the ball fall the floor. No one picks it up. Or maybe they'll try to pick it up again and throw it at you, but it falls on the floor again. And so in that way, we're leading by example through practice. And it's not by giving them a Dhamma talk and telling them, oh, your conduct is so unwholesome. But it's just that we're becoming more wholesome in our conduct. Hence, we're affecting other people's conduct too. And so things become more bearable, more tolerable. Also, we stop taking things so much personally. My mom says still some really horrible stuff to me, but I'm kind of like, well, I understand why she's saying that. I understand where she's coming from. And I don't pick it up. I just see it for what it is. And I'm like, okay, that's all right. Mom, I still love you. It's okay. I know you're suffering. It's all right. Yeah, there's a pandemic. Yes. So yeah, once again, I don't have an answer. Like, should be doing this or you should be doing that, because that's the work that you need to do with yourself and start evaluating. That's actually basically how we attain awakening. In Zen, they say, what is the teaching of a lifetime? Someone asks a senior monk, and the monk replies, an appropriate response. So this is your opportunity to develop the wisdom to understand what is an appropriate response in this circumstance. Hello, Putrika. Good to see you. Oh, and you're so kind, Gita, with all your wishes. Ah, Denise is saying, birds of feather flock together. Yeah. Okay, that's great. That's basically chi si somiglia si piglia. Wait, let me copy and paste because I like it. I want to remember this one. And Kumu says, we find similar thinking people in these online Dharma communities. So very grateful for that. We can always go to Dhamma after tough situations with family, and Dhamma helps family. Yeah, well, we might have different sort of conditions in Dharma circles, but we all are committed to practice. And that's a beautiful thing. We're all committed to dispel greed, hatred, and delusion. And yeah, that creates room for wholesome mind states to arise and for unwholesome mind states to remove. So what we have in common is the most precious thing, is the Dhamma. Not trivial, silly things like, I don't know, stamp club or stamp collections. I don't know why I'm thinking, it must be because when I was 6 years old, I was into stamps. It's one of those memories from when I was 6. But, all the bizarre, whatever things that we normally have in common with people that are trivial and don't lead towards the end of suffering. Dharma circles, we do have something extremely precious, the most precious thing, actually, the teachings of liberation. So yeah, I love being surrounded by my spiritual friends. And Dean says, a friend asks my opinion and is often offended by my honest opinion. It's like I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't tell what I see as the truth. How can one honor right speech in such a situation? Oh, yeah, that was my difficulty at the very beginning. Especially because, it still is. I'm still working on it, but I have become significantly better than I used to in the past, because now I follow the suggestions of the Buddha that we actually normally, we haven't done it in a while, well, definitely not on retreat, but we used to do this recollection every day of how to give admonishment and how to receive admonishment. So whenever we are giving any type of admonishment, is it the right time? Is it true? Am I saying this with a mind of loving kindness? Is my voice gentle? I'm missing one. The right time, gentle. True, I said it. There's a 5th factor that I'm currently, see, that's why I'm saying that I'm perfecting it. There's always one that I'm like, that I miss. But at the very beginning of my practice, I'm like, well, this is true. I'll just say it. Is it beneficial? Yes, exactly. Woo-hoo. Like, it is true. It's true. Get it together. Mamma mia, this fragility. And I still have, a little bit of that tendency also, because my mom is very practical. So she would just have that. She raised us with not much. I don't know. There's lots of conversations in this country of safe spaces. Well, apparently I was not raised in a safe space. There is no such thing as a safe space in my family, to a degree that I didn't even realize that there were safe spaces. I'm still trying to understand what a safe space is. So, so my requirement was just, this is true, and this needs to be said. And is this the right time? Definitely the right time for me, because I want to say it. And is it gentle? Who cares? Deal with it. Is it appropriate time? All of that is it's all factors that actually come into play whenever we are going up to someone and sharing, even if they're inviting us to share their opinion, to share our opinion. Still, if we are quote unquote criticizing or highlighting a defilement, if the person is an unenlightened being, which they most certainly are because they have a defilement, they're unenlightened, it will sting. Just stings. Stinks and it stings. So that's also why we learn actually how to also receive admonishment. And when we learn how to receive admonishment, the first time I read that sutta, I started laughing, cracking up, because it's basically a list of everything we do whenever we are admonished. So, like, oh, as someone tells us something banal, like, please switch the lights off before leaving the room. Well, what about you? You left them on the other day. Or then perhaps we change the subject altogether. Oh, yeah. Oh, look, it's been snowing so much. Or perhaps we take it and we get really angry and hostile, like, yeah, fine, yeah, we'll just switch the light off. Or, there's there's a very long list. And I started laughing because it was kind of going to a therapist, an intense concentration therapy session where I was like, whoops, guilty. So then we start seeing how surreal, our mind is, that when we go and admonish people, we're expecting them to be all holy and like responding so gracefully. But then when we are on the receiving end, we have all sorts of defilements coming up in our mind. So that's when we start actually practicing compassion, that we're all here trembling together. We all have the same greed, hatred, and delusion. It just manifests in different ways, and it just depends on which side of the spectrum we are. So then we can become better and better at admonishing, and we can become better and better at receiving admonishment. But even, in the most perfect of conditions, like I feel like here at Empty Cloud Monastery, I am extremely lucky, surrounded by really great people, really great practitioners committed to the path. We still get into, difficulties. We still admonish poorly, and we still receive admonishment poorly. But we're all improving. We're all getting better at it. And eventually we'll all attain awakening. So we won't even need to admonish one another. It's so great. End of suffering, everything. Get rid of it. But in the meanwhile, we just practice patience, endurance with ourselves and others. And muy bonito, Ricardo. I remember your name. It's so great. It says, beloved Bhantes, right now I'm the only, Ayya, actually. But you can also call me Bhante. It's fine. I don't mind. Or you can also call me hey, yo, you. Oh, I'm being told that Bhante was used for the bhikkhunis as well. Great. So even more so, you can call us. And vice versa. But the vice versa I knew, that I is gender neutral. But apparently also Bhante gender neutral is wonderful. Great. See, all this gender stuff, like it's all on all us unawakened beings that we get really obsessed. Well, this is if you have these amounts of bumps in that part of the body, then you get that title. If you don't, well, sorry, this other title. So complicated. Anyway, So Muy Bonito says, have you discussed a timeline when you'll be available to receive servers volunteers? I'm so excited. I'll get vaccinated next week. Can't wait to sit with you. Oh, sado, sado, sado. Well, we have no idea. I'm actually not the person in charge for a very good reason to decide all our COVID protocols. Because I thrive in chaos, and that's can be okay. But when there's a pandemic, probably probably not. So yeah, whenever there are people who know how to do things better than me, I'm like, be my guest. So should probably speak to Bante Sumano about that. Knock, knock, not, hint, hint. And Dean says, what's the name of the sutta that talks about skillfully receiving admonishments? It's actually posted on our website. Let me get a link for you. On our chanting resources. So I'll find it right now. Yeah, right here. Giving and receiving admonishment. Okay, perfect. And that was the last question, it seems, unless something else comes up. And Adine says, thank you, Bante. You're very welcome, Adine. It's so funny because actually a lot of times they have been called Bante in the past. Because normally people, I mean, we're kind of rare, us female monks, so we're not that, we're not, or like, like the black sheep. It's not that common. So people sometimes are a little bit, not used to what is the right term to address, and then perhaps they feel a little bit of hesitancy in asking. So just go like, okay, Bante. And I didn't personally care too much. And I kind of like Bante as it sounds. But now I love that. Actually, I did not know that. It's also appropriate. So it's even great. Maybe they actually knew. All this time I thought that they didn't know, and I created this whole story in my mind. But that was the reason why they were using Bante. But in reality, actually, lay people knew better than I did. And Cal's friend says, I had a question above it, if it is okay. Oh, did I skip it? Oh, yes, I did. I'm so sorry. I'm getting older, getting closer to 40 than to 30. So as time goes by, I can't use technology anymore. I find it increasingly difficult to figure it out. I opened Facebook the other day and I was like, wait, what? Tab? Yeah, everything's impermanent. So it's good that Bante Sumana is 10 years younger than me, so can rely on him at least for 10 more years. And Kaiser friend says, any tips on dealing with losing hope, thinking it won't ever work out, the path is too difficult, etc.? I hope I'm not being too much of a downer. Usually I'm more cheerful, really. Oh, don't worry about it. That is the depression of the ascetic. Been going on, well, definitely for 2,500 years, but actually since this undiscoverable beginning. So yeah, I get that, well, not all the time, but quite often. Well, not quite often. I did get it quite a lot actually during, it was my January was like this. I would go, wow, I'm such a mess. There is no hope for anything. They're like sotapanna, like forget about enlightenment, not even like stream entry, like not even anything. I should just give up. This is too much of a mess. Then I would get it together and then I would go like, oh, I have the perfect conditions for awakening in this lifetime. It's amazing. It's incredible. And then bam, back into it. It's been a roller coaster. It's so interesting. So, tips is to once again look at the mind, see what we're working with, understand that it's a temporary condition, and see, why am I experiencing this hopelessness, for example? There's always a sort of trigger. So is it perhaps that our mind is extremely restless? At a certain point, I have that. Was insane, so restless. And because I was also reading the suttas and the Buddha, I think I shared about it like a couple of days ago, in terms of paying attention to the element of tranquility. It's like, okay, let me try this out. And I tried it out and it worked. Incredible. The mind settled a little bit. The other advice that he gives for restless mind is to do mindfulness of breathing. So I would, when that didn't work, I would go back to the element of tranquility and I get back to that would be supportive to the mindfulness of breathing. So that's how I was practicing. Then at a certain point, my restlessness turned into drowsiness, which I never experience usually. It's not one of my hindrances. But now I have a lot of sympathy, I have to say, for people who have who experience drowsiness. At a certain point, I would find myself like this, doing sleeping meditation. I was like, oh, that was very interesting. And it was actually not radically different than having a restless mind. So yeah, they are once again looking at all the different possibilities and following the instructions of the Buddha. So switching perhaps the meditation object. The meditation object is not working and it's not particularly interesting. Recollecting the Dhamma. So something that I did that really worked for me actually was at a certain point I was like, well, there is feeling depressed and unhappy. What does the Buddha recommend? To recollect the qualities of the Buddha, to recollect the qualities of the Dhamma, to recollect the qualities of the Sangha. So I started recollecting the Buddha. And we have this, well, we actually are so lucky to have so many beautiful Buddha rupas. So I started meditating in front of the statue that there's a statue that really inspires me from Burma. I have a thing for Burmese statues. I love them. They fill my mind with faith. And and I was just contemplating the statue and recollecting all the incredible qualities of the Buddha. And then recollecting all the incredible qualities of his teachings, the Dhamma. And then recollecting the incredible qualities of the Sangha, all the incredible practitioners who have followed his teachings and have attained awakening, that it's possible. And they all had a mind full of greed, hatred, and delusion, just like mine. The Buddha included. But they managed to do the work. And then I started recollecting my own virtue, all the good deeds that I've done. And the more I was recollecting them, I was like, oh, actually, it's so great. Oh, what a little cutie. Oh, good. Oh, I love you. And the mind becomes happy. By the way, that was not my own idea. The Buddha encourages us. It's another instruction he gives us to recollect our own virtue. There's no shame in recollecting our own virtue. It's the opposite. We have to do it. It's a good practice. Yeah, incredible. Don't be afraid of merit. The Buddha says also to the bhikkhus, also to the monks, and the bhikkhunis. So both male and female monks. Yeah. Do not be afraid of merit. make as many good deeds, cultivate as many wholesome, virtuous qualities as possible, and then recollect them and rejoice. So beautiful. Today, I haven't killed any sentient being. It's incredible. It's like better than 99% of humans on Earth. Well done. Wow. It's like I'm the 1%, part of the 1%. The actual 1% that we want to join, though, not the 1% that is cultivating greed, hatred, and delusion by destroying natural resources, by hoarding food, hoarding material goods while people are indigent. I remember seeing a meme a while back that was kind of hilarious and going, like if scientists started observing chimpanzees, like monkeys, and they found a monkey that would hoard 99% of the of the sort of, food or the essential needs of the monkey community, they would start studying the bloody monkey, like what is wrong with this monkey. But in our culture, we put these people on Forbes and celebrate them. How disconnected are we? There is no such thing in the animal world of hoarding these huge amounts without using them, like just stockpiling them like when they get dust. And then you come out of your palace and there's people starving, people not having any shelter, people not having any clothing, and you're just stockpiling all that crap. It's insane. Yet we're all like very obsessed about joining that 1%, and only kind of upset if we're not part of that 1%. And we're like, oh, they shouldn't be joined. Until I join the 1%. So that's not the 1% that we want to join. We want to join the 1% of virtue, the 1% that does not kill, that does not steal, that does not lie, that does not make sexual misconduct, that doesn't intoxicate themselves and then breaks all the other precepts, then kills, steals, lies, and so forth. And that's an incredible 1%, right? Already like incredible state of being. So yeah, just simply recollecting that brings joy to the mind. You can also recollect what is very helpful for me is to remember my mind when I used to kill. Because when we're talking about killing, we're not talking about necessarily sentient beings. I never killed a sentient being in this lifetime. But oh my God, I exterminated so many insects in my life. Prior to Buddhism, I thought it was crazy, insane not to do so. My partner, I remember, was with this partner who, on the other hand, would not kill. And I remember getting really angry because they didn't kill the insects. God, that's completely stupid. You gotta kill that insect, kill that insect. And now the thought that I was that person is horrifying, but I still remember how deluded my mind was. And so I have compassion for that being. But at the same time, I also remember how difficult it was to bear. That was also contributing to why I was so depressed every year. All of these things create conditions. Create effects, results that are unpleasant, that lead to suffering. So now I don't do that anymore. This is so great, wonderful. Oh, good girl. So yeah, all of these things help to brighten up the mind. Virtue makes our mind happy, and a happy mind gets easily concentrated. But we need to actively, generate these mind states. We can't just, sit on our beds and hope that all of a sudden we're going to get enlightened. No, we need to put right effort in cultivating everything. Sila, samadhi, and panya. And Gita says, examining the 7 factors of enlightenment, each factor in detail was extremely helpful in my meditation. Yes, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sarah, good to see you. Oh, and she says, I will strive to recollect my virtues in difficult times. Sadhu, yes, and you have many virtues. I know you. So that will be a long contemplation, which is great. Because her friend says, thank you, Ayya or Bante. Now I don't know what you prefer anymore. Whatever you like is good. All right. So I think that's all for this evening. And it has been lovely spending time with you all. We will be, next week, I believe there is Tansanti. See, there's another appellative now. There's Bante, Ayya, and Tan. You can call him both, all 3, actually. So there's Ayya Santi next week. And then after that, there will be Bante Soma. And then after that, Ayya Soma. So stay tuned. And have a great weekend, have a great practice, and recollect your own virtue. So we can end with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.